I was standing in the rain holding groceries when I heard her planning our divorce on the phone. His pathetic teacher's salary. She laughed. But she didn't know that I had changed my last name 2 years ago. And that this last name opens the door to an inheritance she never knew about. She thought she had won by taking the house and the car. But I was preparing for a game she didn't even suspect. Javier Martinez pushed open the side door of his Miami bungalow, rain-soaked sneakers squelching against the hardwood. A plastic grocery bag dangled from one hand, heavy with ground turkey and a carton of vanilla oat milk. His other hand brushed stray grass clippings from his neck, remnants of the lawn he'd mowed before the storm hit. The downpour had caught him mid-task, forcing a rushed stop at Kroger to grab dinner essentials before the weather worsened. He set the bag on the counter, water dripping onto the floor, and froze. A voice echoed from the kitchen, sharp and unguarded. "I'm divorcing him," Sophia said, her tone flat, as if discussing a cancelled subscription. "His pathetic teacher's salary can't keep up with me." A pause, then a laugh, bright, unapologetic, slicing through the air. Javier's breath caught. She wasn't whispering or hiding. No AirPods, no hushed tones. Her voice bounced off the tiles, clear as a courtroom verdict. On the other end, her mother, Marg, chimed in. "Finally, honey! You've done all you could." Javier didn't slam the door or clear his throat. He stood still, a silent witness to the unraveling of his marriage. The grocery bag leaked condensation, a slow puddle forming at his feet. Sophia's words weren't angry or heartbroken, they were triumphant, like she'd already won a game he didn't know they were playing. He'd always known she craved more status, more glamour, but this was raw, unfiltered truth. She wasn't just leaving him, she was erasing him. He slipped out to the garage, the rain drumming against the tin gutter outside. Settling into an old green folding chair, he stared at the lawnmower, its blades still flecked with wet grass. For an hour, he sat in the dim light, the storm's rhythm steadying his thoughts. No phone, no tears, just clarity. Sophia's laughter had cut deep, but it also sharpened his resolve. He wasn't the man she thought he was. 2 years ago, he'd quietly changed his last name back to Acosta, his mother's maiden name, to honor his late grandfather. Sophia never noticed, never asked. That choice, made in a lawyer's office without fanfare, was about to change everything. Javier, 35, taught history at a public high school in Miami's Little Havana. His students, mostly from working-class families, loved his classes, stories of revolutions and resilience that he wove into lessons with quiet passion. After school, he'd tinker in his garage, restoring vintage cars, a hobby that kept his hands busy and his mind clear. Sophia, 32, a marketing manager, saw his life as small. She'd roll her eyes when he talked about his students' breakthroughs or spent weekends under the hood of a '67 Mustang. To her, success meant penthouses and designer bags, not lesson plans or engine grease. That night, Javier cooked dinner, salmon burgers and frozen peas, simple but deliberate. Sophia sat across from him, scrolling through Instagram, huffing at posts between bites. She didn't mention the groceries or the rain. Then, mid-scroll, she looked up. "Can we talk about separating? No lawyers, no drama. Just clean." Her voice was casual, like she was ordering coffee. Javier nodded. "Sure. Whatever's fair." Her eyes widened slightly, surprised by his calm. "You can keep the house," he added. "I'll find a place." Her lips curved, a flicker of victory in her gaze. "That's mature of you," she said, barely hiding her satisfaction. She thought she'd outmaneuvered him, claimed the Coral Gables house and her white BMW as trophies. But Javier wasn't playing her game. The name Acosta, which she dismissed as a sentimental quirk when he mentioned it years ago, tied him to a legacy she'd never bothered to understand. His grandfather's trust, locked away under strict rules, was about to surface. Sophia's callous words in the kitchen had triggered something Javier hadn't planned to act on so soon, a contingency that would rewrite her triumph as a misstep. The next morning, while Sophia hosted brunch with her friends, Javier drove to a nondescript office in downtown Miami. The building blended into the street, wedged between a taco shop and a laundromat. Inside, a biometric scanner granted him entry to a quiet suite. Mr. Hernandez, a silver-haired advisor with a handshake like iron, greeted him. "Mr. Acosta," he said, emphasizing the name. "You're ready to proceed?" Javier nodded. "She's made her choice. Activate the trust." Hernandez slid a leather folder across the desk, sealed with wax. "You understand the terms, $12. 8 million, distributable only after legal separation, and only under the Acosta name." Javier's jaw tightened. "I understand." "She doesn't." Sophia's laughter from the brunch table carried faintly as Javier left the house earlier, her voice boasting to friends. "He's being so cooperative. Almost makes me feel bad." She wore the necklace he'd given her for their 5th anniversary, the one she'd once called underwhelming. Javier didn't react, just packed a duffel bag and drove away. She'd never asked why his legal name didn't match the mortgage. Never questioned why he'd reverted to Acosta after his grandfather's funeral. And he wasn't about to tell her. Javier Martinez, now legally Javier Acosta, moved into a modest apartment in Coconut Grove, a single-bedroom unit with a view of a palm-lined street. He packed light, 2 Rubbermaid bins and a military duffel from his college days. The essentials, books, tools, and a stack of ungraded history quizzes. He left behind the Coral Gables house, the BMW, and even their dog, Luna, who always followed him to the garage. Sophia didn't notice his absence until she found a post-it on the fridge, "Bathrooms cleaned." Good luck. She scoffed, tossing it in the trash, assuming he'd retreated to a friend's couch or a cheap motel. Sophia reveled in her victory. At a trendy South Beach cafe, she sipped mimosas with her friends, her voice loud enough to carry over the clink of glasses. "He didn't even fight for the house," she bragged. "Just signed it over. Honestly, I think he knows he's out of his league." Her friend Carla, a real estate agent, nodded approvingly. "You're free now, Soph. Time for a glow-up." Sophia posted a selfie on Instagram, sunglasses perched on her head, a caption reading "New chapter, new me." Her followers showered her with likes, unaware of the storm brewing beneath her curated triumph. Meanwhile, Javier met with Mr. Hernandez again, this time in a conference room with a view of Miami's skyline. The advisor laid out documents detailing the Acosta family trust. "The funds are ready to transfer," Hernandez said, tapping a spreadsheet. "Quarterly distributions, $12. 8 million to start, with you as sole overseer. The board awaits your instructions." Javier leaned back, processing the weight of it. The trust, set up by his grandfather decades ago, was ironclad, accessible only to an Acosta, and only after a legal separation from a non-family spouse. Sophia's name, Martinez, excluded her entirely. She never asked about the name change. Javier said, almost to himself. Hernandez raised an eyebrow. Her loss. Back at the high school, Javier kept his routine steady. He graded papers, coached a debate team, and stayed late to help a student, Diego, rewrite a college essay. Diego's family, immigrants from Honduras, reminded Javier of his own roots. "You think I've got a shot at FIU?" Diego asked, nervous. Javier handed him the revised essay. "You've got more than a shot. Keep pushing." The kid's grin was worth more than the trust fund. Teaching grounded Javier, kept him from drowning in the surreal reality of his new wealth. Sophia, oblivious, pushed forward with her plans. She hired Ricardo, a flashy lawyer who advertised on late-night TV, to finalize the divorce. Ricardo, in a tailored suit, skimmed the paperwork Javier sent back, all signed without protest. "Easiest case I've had," he told Sophia over coffee at a Brickell diner. "Guy's a pushover. No alimony demands, no fight for assets." Sophia smirked, swirling her latte. "He knows he can't compete. I'm keeping the house, the car, everything." Ricardo didn't bother to dig deeper. Why would he? The case was a slam dunk. But Javier was playing a different game. He opened a new bank account under Acosta, separate from the joint accounts Sophia now controlled. He transferred just enough to cover rent and groceries, keeping his teacher's salary untouched. At night, he pored over trust documents, learning the rules that governed his inheritance. The clause was clear: the trust activated only if he was legally unattached and carried the Acosta name for at least 2 years. He'd met that condition unknowingly when he changed his name after his grandfather's funeral, a quiet act of loyalty to a man who taught him to value legacy over flash. Sophia's confidence began to crack when a friend forwarded her a local news article. The headline read, "Anonymous donor funds Little Havana Youth Center." The article mentioned a J. Acosta contributing $50,000 to after-school programs. Sophia frowned at her phone, puzzled. Acosta? Must be a coincidence, she muttered, dismissing it. But the seed of doubt took root. She called her mother, Marg, who was less convinced. Didn't he mention something about his mom's family? You sure he's just a teacher? Sophia brushed it off. Mom, he's got nothing. I know. Javier, meanwhile, prepared for the next step. He met with a small team of advisors to discuss the Trust's first major move, a $1 million donation to restore a historic Miami library. The project would benefit schools like his, giving kids access to resources they never had. At the meeting, a board member asked, "Why stay anonymous?" Javier shrugged. "It's not about me. It's about the kids." But he knew the announcement would go public soon, and Sophia would see it. He wasn't hiding anymore. One evening, Sophia spotted Javier's old pickup truck parked outside a hardware store. She pulled over, curious, and watched him load paint cans into the bed. He was helping a neighbor fix up a community center, his hands smudged with dirt. She almost called out but stopped herself. Why was he still acting like nothing had changed? Her phone buzzed, a text from Carla with a screenshot of another article. Acosta Family Trust to fund local schools. Sophia's stomach dropped. No way, she whispered, zooming in on the name. J. Acosta. Her mind raced, connecting dots she'd ignored for years. That night, Javier sat in his apartment, a single lamp casting shadows on the wall. He opened his laptop and drafted an email to Hernandez, confirming the library donation. As he hit send, his phone lit up with a text from Sophia. "We need to talk. Now." He stared at the screen, then set it down. The game wasn't over, but the board was tilting in his favor. Sophia was starting to realize she'd underestimated the man she'd left behind. Sophia's text lingered unanswered on Javier's phone as he drove to a community center in Little Havana. He was delivering donated textbooks, stacking them in neat piles for the after-school program. A group of kids, including Diego, helped unload the boxes, their chatter filling the humid air. "Mr. Acosta, you think we'll get new computers too?" Diego asked, hauling a stack. Javier grinned. "Working on it." He didn't mention the $100,000 he'd already allocated for tech upgrades. The trust's funds were starting to flow, but he kept his role quiet, letting the community assume a faceless philanthropist was behind it. Sophia, meanwhile, sat in her Coral Gables living room, scrolling through news alerts on her phone. Another article popped up. Acosta Family Trust commits $1 million to Miami Library restoration. The name, J. Acosta, glared back at her. She called Ricardo, her lawyer, her voice sharp. "What is this? He's throwing around millions now?" Ricardo, flipping through files at his Brick Hill office, sounded irritated. "Sophia, I told you, he signed over everything. There's no hidden money in the divorce." She hung up, unconvinced, and dug through old emails, searching for any clue about Javier's name change. Nothing. She'd never paid attention. Javier's days stayed grounded. He taught classes, graded essays, and spent evenings in his Coconut Grove apartment, reviewing trust disbursements. Mr. Hernandez sent updates daily, confirmations of grants for local schools, a new playground for a low-income neighborhood, and a scholarship fund in his grandfather's name. Each move was deliberate, tied to causes Javier cared about. But the library donation was about to go public at a gala, and he knew Sophia would see it. He wasn't hiding, but he wasn't advertising either. The truth would surface on its own. Sophia's doubt turned to panic when her friend Carla forwarded a gala invitation circulating on LinkedIn. "Join us to honor J. Acosta for his transformative contribution to Miami's education." Carla's text followed. "Is this your Javier?" Sophia's hands shook as she opened the link. The event was hosted by the city's elite, mayor, hospital CEOs, preservation board members. She called Ricardo again, demanding answers. "He's a teacher. Where's this money coming from?" Ricardo sighed, promising to investigate, but his tone suggested he was out of his depth. Javier prepared for the gala with quiet focus. He polished his grandfather's watch, a steel heirloom engraved with the Acosta crest, and drove to the venue in his old pickup. The downtown Miami ballroom buzzed with anticipation, tables lined with donors and civic leaders. Javier took the podium, his voice steady. "This isn't about wealth," he said, addressing the crowd. "It's about giving kids a chance to build their own futures." Applause followed, and cameras flashed as he shook hands with the mayor. The live stream broadcast his name, Javier Acosta, across local news channels. Sophia watched from her couch, a half-empty glass of cheap Pinot in hand. The TV screen showed Javier, composed and purposeful, a man she barely recognized. Her phone buzzed with texts from friends, some teasing, others stunned. "Girl, you let that go?" one read. She muted the group chat and called Ricardo, her voice trembling. "He's got millions, and I got nothing. Fix this." Ricardo, now combing through legal documents, found the trust's paperwork. His call back was grim. "Sophia, it's a family trust, activated post-divorce under his mother's maiden name. It's untouchable." She drove to Javier's apartment that night, her BMW screeching into the Coconut Grove lot. She banged on his door, her knock sharp and desperate. Javier opened it, holding a mug of chamomile tea, his calm unshaken. "You lied to me," she snapped, stepping inside uninvited. "This trust, this money, why didn't you tell me?" Javier set the mug down. "You never asked? I changed my name 2 years ago. You didn't notice." Her eyes darted around the bare apartment, searching for proof of his wealth. "You planned this," she accused. Javier shook his head. "I planned to honor my family. You planned to leave." Sophia's voice cracked. "If we'd stayed together, would I have known?" Javier's gaze was steady. "The trust only activates if I'm not tied to someone outside the Acosta line. You made your choice." She sank onto his futon, her confidence crumbling. "I didn't know," she whispered. Javier handed her a manila envelope, divorce papers, fully signed. "You do now," he said. "It's done." She clutched the envelope, her hands trembling, as the weight of her miscalculation settled in. Javier didn't gloat. He didn't need to. The next morning, Sophia met Ricardo at his office. He slid a letter across his desk, sealed with a wax crest. "This came from their lawyers," he said. "The trust is hereditary, isolated from marital assets. You have no claim." Sophia read the 4 sentences, her face paling. "The Acosta family trust is distributed to Javier Acosta. Your client is not named nor entitled to any portion." She stared at the paper, realizing she'd walked away from a fortune she never knew existed, all because she assumed Javier was less than her ambitions. Sophia sat alone in her Coral Gables house, the one Javier had signed over without a fight. The silence was heavy, broken only by the hum of the fridge. Her phone, once buzzing with notifications, now sat dormant, its screen dark. The gala live stream had spread like wildfire across Miami's social circles, and her friend's text had shifted from playful jabs to pointed questions. "You didn't know he was loaded?" one read. "How'd you miss that?" another pressed. She ignored them, her thumb hovering over Javier's contact. She typed a message, "I messed up. Can we talk?" but deleted it before hitting send. Javier, meanwhile, was back at his high school, setting up a new debate club session. His students huddled around a whiteboard, brainstorming arguments for a mock trial. He guided them with quiet precision, correcting logic gaps and encouraging shy voices. After class, he drove to a community garden in Overtown, where he'd funded new planters for a youth program. Volunteers thanked him, calling him Mr. Acosta, with a mix of respect and curiosity. He deflected their praise, focusing on unloading bags of soil from his truck. The trust's wealth was real, but his purpose remained rooted in the work he'd always done. Sophia's desperation grew. She scoured old emails and bank statements, hunting for any trace of Javier's wealth. She found nothing, no joint accounts, no shared investments, just his modest teacher's salary deposited monthly. Frustrated, she called her mother, Marg, who answered with a sharp edge. "You lived with him for years, Sophia. How did you not see this? Sophia snapped back. He never said anything. He was just ordinary. Marg's silence was louder than her words. Maybe you only saw what you wanted to see. The call ended abruptly, leaving Sophia staring at a photo from their wedding, tucked in a drawer she hadn't opened in months. At his Coconut Grove apartment, Javier reviewed trust disbursements with Mr. Hernandez over a secure video call. The advisor outlined the next phase, a $2 million grant for STEM programs in underserved Miami schools. The board's impressed with your focus, Hernandez said, adjusting his glasses. You're moving faster than your grandfather ever did. Javier nodded, signing off on the allocation. He didn't mention Sophia, but Hernandez brought her up. Her lawyer's sniffing around, requesting financial records. Should we prepare for a challenge? Javier shook his head. Let them look. There's nothing to find. Sophia's lawyer, Ricardo, was unraveling. He'd underestimated Javier, assuming the divorce was a simple split. Now, faced with the Acosta Trust's legal fortress, he scrambled to find a loophole. In his Brick Hill office, he spread documents across his desk, muttering about marital assets and disclosure laws. Sophia stormed in, unannounced, demanding action. He hid millions, Ricardo! That's fraud! Ricardo rubbed his temples. He didn't hide anything. The trust wasn't active during your marriage. It's his family's money, tied to a name you never questioned. Sophia's voice rose. I was his wife. I deserve something. Ricardo slid a legal brief toward her. You got the house, the car, half his 401k. He didn't contest a thing. That's your something. The news cycle didn't slow down. A local TV segment featured Javier at a school ribbon cutting, where he'd funded new science labs. The anchor called him Miami's quiet philanthropist. And social media lit up with praise. Sophia watched from a coffee shop, her latte untouched. A stranger at the next table glanced at her, then at the TV, and whispered to a friend. Isn't that the ex-wife who got nothing? Sophia's cheeks burned. She left, driving aimlessly until she parked outside Javier's apartment again. This time, she didn't knock. She sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel, replaying every moment she'd dismissed him. His late nights grading papers, his weekends fixing cars, his calm acceptance of her demands. Javier, unaware of her vigil, met with the Library Restoration Committee. They reviewed blueprints for the project, a century-old building set to become a hub for students. He pledged an additional $500,000 to equip it with digital archives. A committee member, a retired professor, pulled him aside. You're doing your grandfather proud, Javier. But why stay so low-key? Javier smiled faintly. Attention doesn't build anything. Action does. He left the meeting and stopped by a food truck, grabbing tacos for himself and a neighbor who'd helped paint the community center. Life moved forward, steady and purposeful. Sophia's world, meanwhile, was shrinking. Her Instagram posts, once flooded with likes, now drew snarky comments. Guess you picked the wrong guy, one read. She deleted the app, avoiding the noise. At home, she found a box of Javier's old things, a worn notebook, a keychain from a school trip. Inside the notebook, she saw his handwriting, detailing lesson plans and car repair notes. A single line caught her eye: Acosta Family Meeting, 2023, discuss trust terms. Her stomach twisted. She'd been in his life then, but never asked what he was working on. She'd assumed it was nothing. Late that night, Sophia drafted a letter by hand. I thought you were less than me. I was wrong. No apologies, no pleas, just stark honesty. She mailed it to Javier's apartment, her hand shaking as she dropped it in the box. She didn't expect a reply, but the act felt like a confession, an admission of her blindness. Javier received it the next day, reading it while standing in his workshop, surrounded by engine parts. He folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer labeled Closed Accounts. The letter didn't change his path. It only confirmed hers. Javier Acosta stood at the edge of a newly opened community library in Little Havana, watching kids stream through the doors. The building, restored with his $1.5 million donation, hummed with activity, students flipping through books, teachers setting up coding workshops. He handed a tablet to a librarian, preloaded with digital archives for history classes. "This'll help with research," he said. She thanked him, unaware of his role beyond generous donor. Javier preferred it that way. His focus stayed on the impact, not the spotlight. Sophia, meanwhile, packed boxes in her Coral Gables house. The mortgage payments, manageable when she assumed Javier's income would supplement hers, now loomed large. She'd listed the house for sale, unable to keep up with the costs alone. At a nearby cafe, she overheard two women discussing the library opening, praising that Acosta guy for his work. Sophia's grip tightened on her coffee cup. She'd stopped checking social media after the comments turned cruel, but the city's buzz about Javier was inescapable. Her phone stayed silent, no more texts from friends, just bills and a realtor's email about a showing. Javier's routine held steady. He taught his classes, met with his debate team, and spent weekends mentoring at a youth auto repair program he'd funded. The trust's wealth poured into Miami's underserved corners. $500,000 for a health clinic, $300,000 for a community theater. Each project bore the Acosta name, a quiet tribute to his grandfather's legacy. At a board meeting with Mr. Hernandez, Javier approved a new scholarship fund for first-generation college students. "Make it need-based," he instructed. "No publicity." Hernandez nodded, noting Javier's insistence on discretion. Sophia's lawyer, Ricardo, called with finality. "I filed an appeal, like you asked," he said, his voice clipped over the phone. Their response was airtight. "The trust is locked to the Acosta bloodline, activated post-divorce. You have no legal ground." Sophia, standing in her half-empty living room, pressed him. "There's got to be something, misrepresentation, anything." Ricardo cut her off. "You signed the papers. He gave you the house, the car, half his retirement. The trust was never yours to claim." She hung up, staring at a box of kitchenware, including a mug Javier used for his morning coffee. She tossed it in, the ceramic clinking against pots. A local news channel aired a segment on Javier's latest project, a tech lab for high schoolers. The camera caught him handing out laptops to students, including Diego, who beamed as he powered one up. The anchor noted, "Javier Acosta, a teacher-turned-philanthropist, is reshaping Miami's future." Sophia watched from a motel room, where she'd moved temporarily after selling the house. The TV screen flickered, showing Javier's calm handshake with the school principal. She muted the broadcast, her fingers lingering on a sweatshirt she'd kept from Javier's side of the closet. It smelled faintly of engine oil. Javier received Sophia's letter, a single sentence admitting her mistake. He read it once, then filed it in his workshop's drawer with old pay stubs and a faded photo from their early days. The letter didn't stir regret or anger, it was closure, a period at the end of a chapter he'd already closed. He drove to a community center, where he taught a group of teens to rebuild a carburetor. Their laughter, mixed with the clank of tools, grounded him. Later, he met with Hernandez to finalize a $1 million endowment for local museums. "Keep my name off the press release," Javier said. Hernandez smiled. "You're making that hard." Sophia tried to rebuild. She took a new marketing job, but the pay barely covered her motel rent. Her former friends, once quick to cheer her fresh start, drifted away, their texts replaced by silence. At a job fair, she saw a flyer for a scholarship funded by the Acosta Trust. Her jaw tightened, but she grabbed it, reading the eligibility: students from low-income families. She crumpled it, not out of anger, but resignation. She'd misjudged Javier, seeing only his paycheck, not his purpose. The gala for the museum endowment marked Javier's final public appearance that month. He spoke briefly, his grandfather's watch tucked in his pocket. "Legacy isn't about what you keep," he said to a crowd of donors. "It's about what you build for others." The room applauded, a quiet respect settling over the attendees. Sophia saw the speech online, streamed from a library computer. She didn't cry or rage, she just watched, the weight of her choices clear. Javier wasn't gloating, he was moving forward, untethered. Sophia sent one last email: "I'm sorry. I didn't see you." Javier read it at his workshop, surrounded by engine parts. He didn't reply. Instead, he drove to his school, where Diego showed him a college acceptance letter from FIU. "Told you," Javier said, clapping the kid's shoulder. The Trust's millions were reshaping lives, but moments like these were his real wealth. Sophia, in her motel room, packed the last of her things, the sweatshirt folded neatly on top. She'd written her story as a triumph, but Javier's was the one Miami would remember.